Hello and welcome. You're watching Coronavirus Facts versus Myths. I'm Gargi Rawaz. This is the show where we get you all the latest on the pandemic. Now, the big focus on the show today is the new strain, Delta Plus, that has been detected in several countries around the world. Dozens of cases of the new variant called Delta Plus have been discovered in the UK. Now, Public Health England has said there have been 41 cases of the new mutant strain, also known as AY.1, found in the country. It's also been found in several other countries, including India, Canada, China, Japan, Nepal, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Turkey, Switzerland, and the United States. Now, in India, if we talk about the spread in India, there are over 40 cases so far in the country of the Delta Plus variant. They have been reported in 8 states. Well, to talk more about about the spread of this new variant and what it means, we're joined by Professor Sanjeev Krishna, Professor of Molecular Parasitology and Medicine, Infection, St. George's, University of London, and Dr. Hemant Deshmukh, Dean, KEM Hospital, Mumbai. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Krishna, first to you, tell us what do you know in the UK about the Delta Plus variant? What is being said so far? You have a few dozen cases there, and it is being said that the variant is more transmissible, though more studies are needed.
Yes, I think it's the... Thank you very much, by the way, for having me on, Gargi, and hello to your viewers. Yes, I think what the last point you made is the important one, is that we do need more information. The baseline numbers are very low. And when you want to assess increase in transmission, for example, you need to be able to see how the virus variant is performing against the virus variants that are already there. And at this stage in this country, you know, by far and away, the most common variant is the actual original Delta variant. So it's very early days to come to any conclusions about transmissibility or even other conclusions about, for example, you know, if it can cause more severe disease, perhaps, or how vaccines might work against this strain. I think we really have to play a very careful watching, very careful waiting, gathering of information, and this emphasizes how important it is to collect information on the genetic sequences of these variants and viruses so that we can monitor how things evolve.
All right, Dr. Deshmukh, here in India as well, you know, we're still studying it further. Initially, it was called a variant of interest, now a variant of concern, but we still don't know, though there is talk about, you know, how it perhaps can affect lungs more or even evade monoclonal antibodies. What do we know so far?
Gargi, the number one symptom, that is of COVID-19, everybody knows. But the number one symptom in COVID-19 Delta variant is headache and followed by sore throat, runny nose and some sort of fever. The more traditional COVID symptoms like cough and loss of smell are rarely heard of. But this variant is definitely of concern to us, and the amount of extent that this variant can cause damage to the lungs is right now really not known. But what we know right now is that it is the most contagious yet, and amongst those not yet vaccinated, may trigger a very serious illness in people other than the other variants.
All right, and so Professor Krishna, we know there in the UK, it's all about relaxing the restrictions, and of course, then the Delta variant was spreading very rapidly, and that has raised concerns about, you know, opening up or doing away with all restrictions. And now with this, with Delta Plus variant also there, what is being said or what is being decided?
Well, I think we should come back to some of the information that is already quite well-founded. And that is that the vaccines that have been used here, they do reduce significantly the risk of disease, severe disease, and the risk of hospitalization. So whatever the variant, at the moment, we are seeing now a difference between the numbers of cases as detected by diagnostics and the numbers that need to come into the numbers that need hospitalization and treatment for more severe disease. And that, of course, is very important positive news that supports the effective use of vaccines, including appropriate double jabbing as soon as it's possible to do. So we need to get maximum vaccine effects as soon as possible. Apart from that, we need to collect all the information as we have done with the original Delta variant. So we need to see how the virus performs in all sorts of laboratory studies, and we need to see, as we are discussing now, the clinical effects of the virus, and notice if there are differences and the important aspects of these differences.
Right. Dr. Deshmukh, according to the statement released by the centre yesterday, it seems the first case of this Delta Plus variant was detected in April in Maharashtra. So that means it's actually been circulating since April? Right, Dr. Deshmukh, can you hear me?
Gargi, the first detection of this Delta variant was much earlier than we actually think of. It was probably in the month of December 2020 that the first variant was detected. And probably we have such many more variants which are coming right now. Of this variant is taking a lot of time, and any kind of Delta variant, basically the treatment guidelines will not change right away. We are right now giving the traditional course of antibiotics and other antiviral agents, as we did in the first wave also. The only concern here is that this Delta variant is more transmissible than the other variants, especially the Alpha variant. And we need to really see to it that most of the vaccination is over before we actually tackle this
Dr.
Delta
Deshmukh,
variant right
here
now.
I was talking about the Delta Plus variant, and also already there are concerns over the number of cases, between yesterday and today, the cases increasing in Maharashtra, and it's always Maharashtra where it begins, where we see the number of cases going up, and that's something that we need to watch very, very closely.
Yeah, basically what we understand right now is that the transmissibility of this Delta variant plus is definitely more. It is more contagious. So the basic idea of preventing this disease is going to be threefold. That is masking, definitely, hand sanitization, and obviously a physical distancing between the patients as well as the probable people who are going to get infected with this.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Krishna and Dr. Deshmukh, for joining us, and we'll continue to track this very, very closely. And remember, the only way out of how we can stay ahead of these variants is through the vaccinations. And that's the next big focus on the show. Let's focus on the vaccination drive. And while vaccinating 1 crore people every day remains the target of the government, and the record 88 lakh plus vaccinations that took place on Monday was a push in that direction, sustaining that momentum going forward will depend on availability of vaccines and the effort put in by states. It also requires a big push in rural areas and among those who are not so digitally savvy. And for this, we need more involvement from corporates and civil society. To talk more about this, we're now joined by the CEO of Medanta Hospital, Pankaj Sahni. Medanta has been holding vaccine camps in villages and smaller colonies in and around Gurugram. So, Pankaj, if you would tell us what prompted you to organize these camps, and what was the thought that went into it?
Thank you very much, Gargi, for having me on the show. The basic thought was that everybody deserves an equal access to vaccines. And it was our belief at Medanta that it is our responsibility as much as it is anybody else's to assist with this vaccination drive. One basic philosophy of ours has always been to try to give healthcare access to as many members of the community as possible. So this was part of our DNA, part of our original thought process. The second thing is that, look, this virus is such that nobody is safe until everybody is vaccinated. And so it's very easy for people to isolate themselves mentally into certain bubbles and say, well, I'm vaccinated, or my friends are vaccinated, or my social circle is vaccinated. But the virus doesn't believe in any of this. So the virus doesn't differentiate between the rich and the poor. The virus doesn't differentiate between those people who have certain accesses and those who don't. And so it is important for us as a nation, and indeed across the world, to vaccinate as many people as possible. So we didn't really think twice about this. We just went ahead and started. And we are very happy that the local government in Gurgaon supported us. Other governments in locations where we have facilities are very keen. And so we just did it. It really wasn't much thought.
And what was the experience like for your medical staff? If you could tell us some of the challenges they encountered, was there a lot of hesitancy? Did they need to counsel people?
So actually, we were pleasantly surprised. The demand was huge. We had, in our vaccination clinics, we had lines starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, even though the vaccination camps were actually starting a couple of hours later. We tied up with local NGOs to help with information and awareness campaigns. We haven't actually seen the same kind of vaccine hesitancy that you're hearing about in some of the rural communities. But we did have medical personnel on board. We sent a team, doctors, nurses, patient care staff to actually assist with any queries that people may have. I think by and large, though, at least in the Gurgaon area, we found that the administration has done a good job of building awareness. We are very happy that media outlets like yourselves are actually helping promote the awareness. And while there is some concern specifically with access, and so the digital divide challenges, people not being able to access smartphones, etc. And so that's why we wanted to go out into the villages. So we have done all of our camps really in the areas where people have the least amount of access, where people haven't been able to come out. We've been doing with rag pickers, with local laborers, with construction workers, and really going into the communities where they live, where they work, and trying to access them there. And by and large, we've seen a very positive response, and I'm very grateful to our teams as well as to the partners that have supported us in doing this.
And when you talk about the digital divide, if you could tell us a bit about that, because we've been speaking about that a lot, and it's a big challenge. Now that you're allowed walk-ins of those above 18 years of age, has that made the whole process a lot easier?
It has made the process easier, and I think that while many of us across the country are fairly savvy with mobile phones, there is still a section of society that is not so comfortable with using it, or maybe the access is not so clear. Language may be another issue. And so I think what we've been able to do is put people on the ground who will help actually with the registration. So if a patient walks in, doesn't know how to do registration on the CoWIN app, we assist them. It's also not just a function of economics. There are certain age groups. There may be certain people who are less digitally or technologically savvy that feel that they won't be able to get this done. And so we've been reaching out to them. We also find that there are certain groups which are not very sure whether it's really required. So there is some hesitancy, like I've already had COVID, do I still need to have the vaccination? And so building awareness around that, or that I've had one vaccination and they don't realize that they actually need to come in for the second vaccination. So I think all of this stuff needs to be put together, whether it's the digital access, whether it's economic access, and whether it's informational access. And that's what we've been trying to bridge, is actually go out into the communities, help people actually address all of these three concerns.
And are you planning to hold more such camps in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. So we've already started camps such as this in Jharkhand, where we have a facility. We will be starting in UP, in Madhya Pradesh, as well as in Bihar, Delhi, and of course Haryana we've already been doing. So we will be doing these camps in all the areas where we have our facilities. But more than that, we've already started camps in parts of Rajasthan. We have demands for doing this in parts of Patna. So I think it's our responsibility as healthcare providers to actually go out there into the communities, especially places where there may not be hospitals and clinics where patients could easily access vaccination centers. And so we are creating mobile centers, partnering with various corporates, various NGOs, various associations to hold vaccination camps on their premises, where our teams will come there for a couple of days and vaccinate people. So we're doing whatever we can, and we would be very happy to partner with anybody who would be willing to share the challenges and the burdens of doing this vaccination.
All right, and hopefully more big hospitals will also, conduct camps like this. Thank you so much, Pankaj Sahni, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
With that, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, we bring you some of the questions that are frequently asked about vaccines and about COVID, and Dr. Hemant Deshmukh will answer those questions for you. Now for our special campaign, Vaccinate India, in partnership with Google, where we discuss questions that you often look up online about vaccines, about COVID, questions that you often Google. And with us, we have Dr. Hemant Deshmukh to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Deshmukh, for staying on. And one of the questions that, still gets looked up a lot online is, how do I prevent COVID?
We go back to the old school of thoughts right now. The basic idea behind preventing COVID is to not allow the virus to enter the respiratory system of our body, which basically boils down to sanitization, masking, and maintaining a good physical distance between two people. We have been always saying that two is a crowd and hence remain single all the time. And that's the way that you can prevent COVID from entering the body.
Right. And doctor, over the year and a half that we've been dealing with this pandemic, there's a lot that we have learned during the course of it. Also how it travels through the air, and it's a lot more of that transmissible through the air than what we initially thought.
Yeah. Basically, whenever last time, that is March 2020, we were really worried that this virus is going to get transmitted from the hard surfaces also, as well as virus sitting on any kind of material like milk, fruits, vegetables. But right now what we learn is after 14 months that this virus gets transmitted from the air, and the whole idea about preventing this transmission is to maintain a good physical distance, maintain a good surgical mask that will prevent the virus from entering the nostrils or through the eyes.
All right. And ventilation is also something that's really come into focus during this time. Another question that people often look up is self-care during COVID. How does one care for oneself when you're suffering from COVID?
When you have been advised home isolation and you are basically asymptomatic for any symptoms of COVID-19, what we need to take good care of yourself is increase your immunity by and large. See to it that you remain indoors, not to allow one person or the other person to enter the room so that your virus doesn't get transmitted. And any kind of isolation has to be seen to it that it is a well ventilated room, as you have already pointed out, and see to it that there is fresh exchange of air happening all the time during your stay inside the house or through the hospital. One thing that you should take care of always is have a warm water gargle at least twice or thrice a day so that you keep the virus at bay, and see to it that you have adequate, nutritious, on-time food all the time. And if you have been prescribed any kind of COVID medications, you have to take them on time.
Right, doctor, and during this second wave of the pandemic, a lot of talk also about the overuse of steroids, and this is something that all of you doctors have now cautioned against, especially early on in the disease. If you could tell viewers a bit about that.
Basically, COVID-19 is a diabetogenic disease itself, which simply means that any kind of virus penetrating the pancreas or anybody who is in the pre-diabetic state develops some kind of sugar imbalance, and this virus creates a sense of diabetes-like disease within the patient. This eventually transforms the patient into a diabetic patient with a lot of sugars somewhere in the region of 400 to 500 in a previously non-diagnosed diabetic patient. So this virus is likely to cause diabetes in patients who were already in the pre-diabetic state.
Absolutely. And what we've also had is, since whole families have been getting affected in this second wave, very often people are sharing doctors' prescriptions among themselves, in different age groups. And this is something that also a lot of doctors have pointed out against, isn't it?
Very much. This simply means that one size does not fit all. So one prescription does not necessarily mean that somebody's prescription can be followed for the other patient. It all depends on what are the comorbidities of the patient. That is any kind of pre-existing disease. That is presence of diabetes in the patient, presence of hypertension or blood pressure, any kind of other comorbidities, something like obesity. So each medication will be suitable only for a unique patient and cannot be repeated for any other patient. So it is very, very convenient for patients to share a lot of prescriptions, share a lot of medications. But we need to understand that everybody's weight is different. everybody's dosage is going to be different. The amount of steroids needed can be very difficult and very different from each other.
All right, so that's how to care for yourself and just, listen to your doctor, rest and, follow all the advice of doctors. Thank you so much, Dr. Deshmukh, for taking time out and answering those questions for us.
Thank you.